Chairs, No Waiting, episode number 175, the eBullet, February 2012. Folks, Two Chairs, No Waiting is brought to you each week by the wonderful folks, over at Weaver's Department Store. Guess who sponsors the eBullet? Weaver's Department Store. So drop by over at Weaver's, pick up some of your favorite Mayberry items. You're going to love it. You can drop by anytime and pick it up. WeaversDepartmentStore.com. Two Chairs No Waiting is also brought to you by donations from listeners like you. The executive producer of Two Chairs No Waiting for this episode is John Semino. Thank you, John, for your support, and thank you for your donations. Folks, hey, I do want to thank you all for donating to the podcast. I want to thank Weavers for always being so diligent in helping us. And, okay, let's tell the truth. Weaver sponsors the podcast, but they don't really sponsor it. I've always just said that because I want to help out the Andy Griffith Show Rerun Watchers Club. The Andy Griffith Show Rerun Watchers Club online store is Weaver's Department Store. So if you buy from Weaver's, you're supporting the Andy Griffith Show Rerun Watchers Club. It's hard to say. It's a mouthful. And tonight, what we're going to be talking about is the eBullet, February 2012. I'm Allan Newsome, your host for Two Chairs No Waiting, and it's great to have you with me for this episode of Two Chairs No Waiting, your Mayberry podcast. And we're going to just go over some of the things that are in the February edition, the January-February edition of the eBullet. So if you're listening to this a long time from now, I think you'll still enjoy it because what we're going to go over is some of the cast and crew news. And then we're also going to hit a few things as well. We had some calls from listeners like you for about last week's episode, about 5 episodes that can get your friends hooked on the Andy Griffith Show. We got 2 or 3 of those and a few observations, and we'll try to hit a few of those things as we go, and maybe even have a podcast on some of them as we go forward. So first, let's head on and look at the eBullet. So you guys, if you don't subscribe to the eBullet, you're missing out because, wow, the eBullet is full of great information. This is volume 12, issue 1 of the eBullet that came out February 2012. Now, what we're going to be going through, now this is by no means everything in the eBullet, because if you go and look at the eBullet at any time, it has a calendar of Mayberry events that are coming up around the country, mostly in the Southeast, but not only. And it also has all kinds of other great information about books that are for sale, or not books for sales, but things that Weavers has for sale, events that the cast members are doing all over the place. There's just all kinds of wonderful, wonderful things there that I want to encourage you to go. Now, what we're going to be focusing on is news of cast and crew. That's right. We got some updates from around Mayberry, the cast and crew members of the Andy Griffith Show. We'll start off with the man himself. Andy Griffith is wintering well in his coastal home in Carolinas. So that's wonderful, man. It's so good to hear Andy's doing well. He's making it through the winter weather, living there in North Carolina, right on the coast. Now we're going to, Ron Howard is executive producing the reignition of Arrested Development. If you watch that television show, with a new episodes for TV, well, they're sort of TV. They'll be exclusively on Netflix and possibly a feature film coming to theaters. Ron has also said that he'll be back as the narrator for Arrested Development. Ron is in pre-production as producer and director for a feature film Rush about Formula One racing. And Ron still has plans and hopes for the ambitious and complex project of bringing Stephen King's Dark Towers to TV and movie theaters. Meanwhile, he's scheduled to direct a pilot for a new HBO series about Doc Holliday. And he's executive producer for Sarah Silverman's pilot requested by NBC. And Ron, wow, he's got a lot going on, is among the executive producers for TNT's first reality show, The Great Escape, which will begin a 10-episode run the summer of 2012. When You Find Me, a short film based on 8 photos Ron selected in a contest called Project Imagination, sponsored by Canon, and directed and co-written by Ron's oldest daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard, has been receiving good reviews. And Ron Howard, more information about Ron, has been making the rounds at various film festivals and award shows, including Sundance. He's also the judge for Greenwich, Connecticut Youth Film Festival this winter. And really big Howard family news is that daughter Bryce, Ron Howard's daughter, had a baby girl on January 19th. Yay! Her name is Beatrice Jean Howard Gable. Ron's late mother's name was Jean. As for Beatrice, well, we don't yet know the inspiration for that, but some of us have been accused of presumptuously nicknaming her B. So I don't know if her name is named after Aunt B, but let's pretend. As Mayberry fans, we're going to pretend that, folks. Back to the eBullet. Jim Nabors performed at the 4th annual Music for Children holiday concert in Honolulu in December. Now, the bullet, if you read it, has the Hawaiian pronunciation of Music for Children. I'll leave that up to you to say when you read it yourself, because I can't say it. Na Maliki something. I don't know how to say it. Jim Nabors is still enjoying the good life and weather in Hawaii. So that's wonderful. Jim also has a website. If you want to drop by and see it, it's jimnabors.com. You can keep up with the current events going on around Jim Nabors. Now, his Mayberry cousin, George Lindsay, is getting ready for his 15th annual George Lindsay UNA Film Festival in Florence, Alabama. You can check out the eBullet and look at the Floyd's event calendar for all the festival information and website and all kinds of exciting updates that'll be there. Meanwhile, viewers in the Nashville area were treated to a week of Goober episodes at the end of January and early February when local station WUXP did Goobers Gone Wild Week. Did George like that one? Yo. Maggie Peterson, that's Charlene, for those that don't know, and Betty Lynn, Thelma Lou, headlined a successful Mayberry-themed musical fundraiser for Alzheimer's care and research in Roanoke, Virginia in November. Dean Webb, one of the Dillards and Darlings mandolin player, if y'all remember him, is featured in Songs of Home, Music from the Ozarks for Ozarks Public Television. Dean is interviewed and performs some music with his current band, the Missouri Boat Ride. The show is aired a couple of times, and viewers in the Ozarks, check your local listings for future air dates. Dean and the band are also performing every other Saturday during the winter season at their home base of Kimberling City, Missouri. They'll also be doing a summer series, so be watching that. For complete details of their schedule, visit MissouriBoatRide.com. James Best. We know him as Roscoe from the Dukes of Hazzard, but of course he was the guitar player, which we spent several episodes talking about. James Best is into the editing process for Return of the Killer Shrews, the movie. And for those that don't remember, David Browning's in that movie, the guy who does the Mayberry Deputy at so many Mayberry events around the country. To stay current on the latest Shrews news, including the movie's first trailer, visit KillerShrewsMovie.com. Meanwhile, James was on hand for an art show featuring his work in Mount Dora, Florida on Super Bowl weekend. You can find James at jamesbest.com. Bernard Fox, Malcolm Merriweather himself, says he's doing well and sends all of his best to his Mayberry friends. He's largely retired from acting, but he never says never. He enjoys doing the occasional autograph show in Burbank near his home, and Bernard might be the first featured performer on the Andy Griffith Show to be seen in 3D on the big screen when Titanic is released on April 6th, the 100th anniversary of the Titanic's launch. We're sure we'll hear from trained noticers if there's another key Tags performer who's already appeared in a 3D on the big screen. Julie Adams, Nurse Mary from The County Nurse in episode number 56, is getting good response to her autobiography, The Lucky Southern Star, Reflections from the Black Lagoon, published last fall. For more information about the book and Julie's schedule, check out her website at julieadams.biz. Wow. All these things are in the eBullet, all these websites. And so, folks, I'll put a link in the show notes to the eBullet, and then you can go and check all these out in the Cast and Crew News area of the eBullet. Also on the literary front, Margaret Carey, A Christmas Story, Andy Forecloses episode. She was, she was, her husband was one that got arrested and put in jail at Christmas, and then they were going to foreclose on her house. Remember, that was her, Bess Muggins. Okay, that was Margaret Carey. She's in the process, or she is progressing well with writing for Tinkerbell Talks, Tales of a Pixie-Dusted Life, her autobiography. At last update, she has up more than 60 chapters. Wow. Now, for folks that don't know, Margaret Carey, the reason Tinkerbell Talks, she was they used her and her movements and her positions and everything as the basis for Tinkerbell in the Peter Pan movie by Walt Disney. So she's very active with Walt Disney, the company, and does a lot of stuff like that as well. Now, there's a long story that I'm going to read some of. I'm not sure we'll read it all, but it's about Jack Ellison. Sad news. It's great sadness that we report that writer Jack Ellison, a legend in Mayberry and Hollywood, died in Santa Monica, California on November 17th, 2011. He was 89 years old. Jack wrote more than 34 episodes of The Andy Griffith Show, more than anyone else. Most of his episodes, 29, were in the first 2 seasons and written with longtime collaborator Charles Stewart. Helping Mayberry stay on solid footing after the departure of Don Knotts in The Dawn of Color, Jack returned to write 5 episodes in the 6th season. Jack's landmark episodes of Landmark episodes of The Andy Griffith Show have been legacy enough for most writers, would have been, but Jack had a distinguished career before and after Mayberry. During the 1950s, Jack wrote extensively for All-Star Review, the Colgate Comedy Hour, the Ed Wynn Show, and Jimmy Durante Show. He's got a list of more of the Real McCoys, Johnny Carson Show, the Danny Thomas Show, and among others. In 1961, Jack and Chuck Stewart received an Emmy nomination for their writing on Make Room for Daddy. Jack was nominated for 4 Writers Guild Awards. He and Chuck Stewart won the award for their writing of Manhunt episode of The Andy Griffith Show. A further hint to Jack's importance to The Andy Griffith Show is indicated in the mentions of just a few of his episodes: The New Housekeeper, Ellie for Counsel, Keeper of the Flame, The Manicurist, Barney and the Choir, and Andy on Trial. Jack's talent and versatility allowed him to write brilliantly for any Mayberry mood or theme. Jack was a writer and producer for Gomer Pyle USMC. He also wrote many episodes and was either producer or executive producer for The Doris Day Show, Good Times, One Day at a Time, and Facts of Life, 227, and Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. Jack was born in New York City, April 21st, 1922, and served in the Army during World War II. After the war, he followed his older brother, into show business, first writing jokes for Walter Winchell's newspaper column and then working as one of the top gag writers in radio. Ellison also co-wrote 3 Andy Griffith Show episodes, including one with Jack, The Foster Lady. Jack was predeceased by his first wife, Kate, and is survived by his 4 children, Michael, David, Robbie, and Ethel. His second wife, Estelle, and her 3 children, Marcy, Claude, and Valerie, and 12 grandchildren. A private memorial service was held in Mission Hills, California. In lieu of flowers, the family has requested that donations be made in Jack's name through the OPICA daycare and or Skirball Hospice. The Andy Griffith Show Reowners Club has made a donation on behalf of the fan club as a whole in Jack's memory to the Barbara and Emmett Forrest Endowment for Surrey Arts Council, sponsor of Mayberry Days in Mount Airy, which Jack and Estelle were both able to attend in 2000. We're also sad to report the passing on the same day in December of 2 actors with featured roles in Mayberry. Dan Fraser, who played movie producer Mr. Hampson Mr. Harmon. In Mayberry Goes Hollywood, episode number 13, he died of cardiac arrest at his home in Manhattan on December 16th. He was 90 years old. He had a long career of steady work, but he's probably best known for his role as Captain Frank McNeil on TV's Kojak. As for us Tags fans, we'll always appreciate his character's keen eye for what's special and worth protecting about Mayberry. You can read more about him, and the link is in the show notes, or will be in the link in the eBullet. You'll be able to find it. It'll be there. We're also sad to have to deliver the news that Robert Easton died of natural causes at his home in California on December 16th. He was 81. Robert played the be-eyelashed Pete Johnson in Irresistible Andy. If you'll remember that, Miss Ellie, he was kept winking his eyes at her. He was known as the Dean of Dialect Coaches in Hollywood and is respected throughout the acting profession for his knowledge and expertise. And there's more information there too. So, folks, hey, I hope you enjoyed that. That's a little update of things that are going on in and around the cast members of the Andy Griffith Show. It's sad to see the passing of some of these great folks that were on the Andy Griffith Show or were responsible for so many great episodes of the Andy Griffith Show. But we're so glad to just had them around. All right, folks. Well, now we're going to hear a little bit of feedback from last week. We're going to start out with some feedback from Larry Granger, who called in and had this to say. Well, I said he had this to say. He's being quiet right now. There he is.
Hello, Allan, Larry Granger here. Listened to your podcast last night about Hooked on Mayberry, and I certainly wouldn't object to your 5 episodes. I'm going to give you 5 more. I'd say The Big House is number 5 because you see Barney and Gomer and all their splendor and glory. Number 4, Andy Discovers America, because you see Andy dealing with the female race and the battle of the sexes. Number 3, assuming it's December when you're showing them, would be Christmas Story. Got to have that. Number 2, Goober Takes a Car Apart, because that's a beautiful thing to watch. And number 1 would be Dogs, 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 because selfish giraffes will get them every time. Thank you, sir.
Those selfish giraffes, they will get them every time. Larry, thank you so much for calling in. I love to hear from you folks. I love to have your voices coming through instead of just mine. So let's hear from KJ. She called in from Ohio to give us her feedback.
Well, we want to talk about our 5 best favorite episodes. First is the Pickle Story, and the second one probably is Barney's Car. And then I would have to say The Birdman. And definitely the one with Barney reciting the preamble. And probably episode number 1. That's what we have to say. Thanks. Bye.
Cool. Hey, KJ, thank you so much for calling in. KJ is in our chat room almost anytime we can have folks in the chat room. She's also a member over at iMayberryCommunity.com. I want to encourage you to drop by over there. The iMayberry community is a wonderful place for getting to know fellow fans of the Andy Griffith Show. There's a forum there. You can leave messages. You'll get to see pictures of the people as they sign up. They can post a photograph of themselves in their profile. It's kind of Facebook-y, but not quite. And it's all Mayberry fans. Everybody there is a Mayberry fan. So I want to encourage you to drop by there. If you do, make sure you say hi to KJ. You'll see her there. So KJ, again, thank you so much for calling in. Now we got another one. Now this one was from Jerry. Now he agreed with my, my assessment, but he had a little bit of comment. So let's hear what he had to say. We may talk about this in a future episode.
Allan, this is Jerry from Coleman. I agree with your top 5, getting people hooked on the Andy Griffith Show. I noticed something the other day on episode 95, The Big House. Tiny, I guess it's Tiny, the big one, had a tie clasp that looked like a badge to me. I just wondered if I was the only one that ever noticed that. Enjoy your show.
Now, that was the first I had ever heard of that. It's on The Big House, the episode. Now, it wasn't Tiny. It was the other fella, Jack Lambert. Doc is who he was talking about. And just before the podcast started tonight, I actually went in, and the folks in the chat room were watching, and we did a few screen grabs. And sure enough, the badge, the the tie clip does look very, very much like a badge of some kind. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm not sure we'll be able to identify it or not. But we may talk about that on a future episode. So if you check that out, that episode, and you've ever seen a tie clip like that, or if you know what exact kind of, you're a collector of tie clips, I'd love to hear from you on that so that you can tell us all about it. So call in or email me or send me a picture if you have one of that exact tie clip, and we'll share that on the show. That was a great job by Jerry even noticing that. I had never noticed it. It was really cool. And now we got one last comment. Now, this is about an episode from a few weeks back. If you'll remember, we talked about Opie's kindness. It was episode number 173. And Randy Davis called in. Now, he's got some observations he may not talk about on this voicemail, but another one that we're going to be looking into about Aunt B wearing a ring that we've been looking at. So we've been talking about it on the iMayberry community a little bit. Anyway, let's hear from Randy.
Hey, Allan, this is Randy Davis down in Mobile, actually across the bay from Mobile. Wanted to comment on the Ron Howard's niceness. I'm about the same age as Ron Howard, maybe a few years younger, and I remember back in those days we were taught to yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir, and that's just the way we were brought up, and respect for your elders and what have you, and if you didn't, God help you, it was Daddy's belt. But anyway, that's my 2 cents worth, and I'll sit back and listen to the rest of the podcast. Best to you and yours.
Hey, Randy, thanks for calling in. And boy, is that not the truth. Boy, if you ever said anything to an adult when I was growing up that was out of line, or you didn't call him yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yeah, you got in trouble. So that's true. So Opie, he was a good little boy and been taught manners well by Aunt B and Andy. So, hey, Larry, Randy, again, I want to thank you for calling in. Larry, KJ, Jerry, all of you folks that called in and shared your thoughts, because I'm sure folks enjoy hearing from you just as much as I do. I'd love to hear from you guys, so I want you to give me a call at 888-684-8415. Let me hear your thoughts about stuff. If you know about that tie pin, let me hear about that. I'd love to hear from you about what it was, and we may try to do a podcast on that in the future. You can email me at floyd@imayberry.com. You can call me, as I said, 888-684-8415. Drop by our Facebook page at facebook.com/2chairs, or you can drop by the twocairsnowaiting.com website and leave a message there. Folks, all those ways are great for getting in touch with me. And hey, drop by the imayberrycommunity.com and visit with us. We're there every week on Monday nights. We're recording this live, and everybody in the chat room will be glad to have you with us. Folks, have a great Mayberry week, and we'll see you next time on Two Chairs No Waiting.